Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, May 26th, 2020, and today we're going to be talking about how Joe Biden can win the election with just 11 states. Now, I know that seems very unlikely, but when you take a look at the overall electoral map, there are 11 key states that could ultimately lead to a Joe Biden victory on the presidential map. Now, while this is a very unlikely scenario, it points to a lot of opportunities for Democrats in the upcoming future. When I say upcoming future, I'm talking about the 2024 and 2028 presidential elections, because every single state I am about to fill in has been won by a Democrat since the year 1992, except for one of them, which means that these are 100% in play and also negate a number of safe Democratic states. In 2024, all of these states will either be Democratic states or toss-up states, without a doubt. And, some of these states, actually all of these states, could be classified as a toss-up right now, disregarding some of these safe Democratic states. The reason why I'm choosing Joe Biden for this scenario and not Donald Trump is because this map would go through states such as California and New York and Illinois, which will never go for a Republican within the immediate future unless something drastic happens, which more likely than not, which is less likely than anything else at this point. But again, 2020 throws the surprises left and right. But when you look at this electoral map, you should be very surprised. So it actually consists of filling in a number of states from 2016. Donald Trump in this scenario would just be required, would be able to carry a number of states. Again, we're talking about 11 states, which leaves 39, including the District of Columbia, up for Donald Trump, and he still loses the election. So how is this possible? Well, when you take a look at the electoral map, there's huge population states. And when you're looking at states such as New York and California and Texas, these are states with a very large electoral college presence, which means that when they're voting, they, of course, take precedence over smaller states. New York has around 5 times as many electoral votes as Iowa. Though a candidate may spend more money in Iowa just because it's a closer state, doesn't mean that New York doesn't have more electoral votes. Republicans and Democrats rely on a number of consistent states that vote for them in every presidential election, which is exactly why Texas is the center point of 2020, or at least one of them. While the Rust Belt is the only area that is truly crucial to the Joe Biden campaign, they are starting to target states such as Texas, states that have become increasingly more Democratic over the past 8 years, in midterm elections, in special elections, in presidential elections. The state of Texas has narrowed down significantly, enough so that if it continues at this current pace, should be a lean or likely Democratic state by 2030. But again, that's all with increased immigration and a number of things that maybe tried to be avoided by members of an opposition party. But when you look at the overall map, you could see actually how this is a very realistic scenario. So we're actually going to fill in some of the early states that have gone to the Democrats in the past, that pretty much are going to be the foundation for this 11 state electoral college sweep. And that includes New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California, and it also goes through to actually 3 previously Democratic states. It leaves the states of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. While Ohio isn't exactly as in play as Michigan and Pennsylvania, both Michigan and Pennsylvania, based off my ratings, are expected to go to Joe Biden, and that also agrees with all of the polling data and all of the electoral trends that we have right now prior to the 2020 election, not 2016 specifically, but 2017 special elections, 2018 special and midterm elections, 2019 special elections. I think that Michigan and Pennsylvania are pretty safe bets for Vice President Biden. While President Trump will heavily campaign there, and it's not going to be easy for the Democrats to win there, I think that it is very much possible. I think it's way easier for Joe Biden to win in those states than Hillary Clinton. He would just have to play his cards right. Unfortunately for the Democrats, they haven't been doing that recently. There's been a number of things that have negatively impacted Joe Biden's campaign, but again, doesn't really matter if he's ending up winning the states anyway. But looking at the overall electoral map, this does not include states such as Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. These are all states that could go to Donald Trump, and it isn't exactly it's not. Sorry about that, my screen recorder cut out, but we were talking about Colorado and Nevada, how it's possible for Donald Trump to win there, but New Mexico is not so likely, but it's not going to be crucial to a Joe Biden victory if he goes through these 11 states. States such as Hawaii, well, very unlikely, Washington and Oregon, very unlikely going for Donald Trump, could go to him, and he'd still end up losing the election. In this scenario, again, I'm only going to give the states that Joe Biden needs in order to win the 270 electoral votes needed. Virginia could go to Donald Trump. This would require Joe Biden to carry North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. While this actually may not be the hardest thing for Joe Biden to do, it looks like he's at very good ground in Florida and North Carolina as of right now. He's increased support amongst older voters, which are crucial demographics for both of those states. In 2016, Donald Trump won ages 65 plus, 60 to 37, and according to recent polling data, Joe Biden ties him at 47% nationwide. So if any type of increase such as that in any of these three states could lead Joe Biden to an eventual victory. Though Georgia, I think, will go to Donald Trump on Election Day, this can be easily made up by any of the other states that I'm about to fill in as Republican. For Florida, 100% in play for Joe Biden. I wouldn't say he's the likeliest candidate to carry the state of Florida, but I would say that he has a pretty reasonable chance. 46, 47%, but Donald Trump I still think is the narrow favorite to win the state of Florida. But again, it's not out of reach for the Democratic Party, which means that this map, while seeming a little weird, isn't exactly the hardest scenario to reach. When you look at a lot of these states, again, every single state that is going to be blue on this map has voted for the Democratic Party since the year 1992, except for Texas. So when you look at that, they haven't voted for Democrats every single year, but they have at least once since 1992. And even since the year 2000, the only states you have to take out are Georgia and Texas. So it's still, even with those 9 states, you take out Georgia and Texas, that can be easily made up in other states. So Texas obviously is the last state, and that pretty much means that every single state, regardless of, how they've been in the past, even DC could go to Donald Trump and he'd still lose the election. Which means that this is it's just such an interesting map because of the fact that this map is an actual realistic scenario, disregarding some of these safe Democratic states as red. The Democratic Party is not out of the question for winning every single blue state on this map, which means that in future elections, the Republican Party has a lot more to worry about. Forget about the Rust Belt. I mean, if the Democratic Party is able to win based off 11 states, and they would win with way more than 11 states, it starts to, question the GOP's electability in any type of future presidential election. When you look at the changing demographics in a number of these states, there's an increasing Democratic base in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Florida, in Texas, in Arizona, in Colorado, in Nevada, in Virginia, in states that are possibly even red according to this map. Forget about the Rust Belt. Like I said, any of these states in the Rust Belt could be easily made up for with just a couple of safe Democratic states that we know are going to vote that way in pretty much every single election. As soon as you hit the Northeast, boom. Even if New Hampshire and Maine go to Donald Trump and D.C., which isn't likely, taking that one out, still, the Democrats have a pretty solid victory. The reason for this map going to Joe Biden with these purely 11 states is because Texas and Georgia have flipped over. The rest of these states aren't too unlikely for going to the Democratic side. When you look at the states that Donald Trump is probably going to lose, it starts to, circulate in your head whether or not Joe Biden can win off of just a couple of states. And the answer is yes. I mean, Joe Biden can win the presidential election just by holding on to, or at least getting a couple of swing states. Because when you look at the remainder of the electoral map, an electoral college victory such as this would be not possible. We're talking about Joe Biden flipping Texas. We're talking about him winning in Pennsylvania and Michigan. If those states are going Democratic, so is Virginia, so is Maryland, so is Delaware, so is Massachusetts, so are all of the other safe Democratic states. The Democratic Party moving forward is going to be at a very good standpoint looking at presidential elections. As Texas increasingly becomes more Democratic, as Georgia joins the group, as Florida does, as North Carolina does, even if this area has been trending red, which based off of comparing it to the 2008 numbers, of course it's trending red. Obama ran a historic campaign with no real failures. Of course he was going to win these states by solid margins. These states were always close before President Obama. Comparing it to 2008 and 2012 doesn't mean much because Obama is not like every Democrat. He won historic victories with very minimal approval ratings in 2012 and did very well after the 2010 midterm elections. So I would not necessarily say that these states are trending red. Just because 2 elections after a very dominant victory for the Democratic Party, it goes to the GOP, that really doesn't mean too much. Yes, the states have been taking a turn in favor of the GOP, but it isn't exactly going to be solid Republican by the time Texas goes to the Democratic Party or becomes super competitive. That's just not how it works. the American electorate right now, it looks like it's going to do very well for the Democratic Party. Joe Biden literally can win the election based off 11 states. I know that's the entire purpose of this video, but the fact that can happen is insane. And the fact that these states are realistic for Joe Biden, disregarding Texas and Georgia, while making up a very large electoral bunch, take any of the other safe states and add them in, Joe Biden still wins the election. So when you look at North Carolina and Florida and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan, these are states that we know are going to be possibilities for Joe Biden. Illinois, California, New York, New Jersey are safe for Joe Biden. Georgia and Texas are the only ones that are questionable because Donald Trump is more than likely going to carry it, but that's going to be made up for. So the electoral map right now, this entire election is pretty much the Democratic Party's race to lose. While Donald Trump obviously enters in as the clear favorite as the incumbent Republican president, when you look at the 2020 electoral map, there's a very real possibility the Democratic Party could have a very good victory over Donald Trump. While I don't think that Joe Biden is going to perform as well, good enough to carry states such as North Carolina and Florida or Ohio, Joe Biden is entering into this race with a very large electoral college advantage. Most of the bigger states are on the Democratic Party side. Illinois, New York, New Jersey, California, and when you throw in swing states that are now moved over into the Democratic column, such as Virginia and Colorado and Nevada, it becomes a lot harder for the Democratic Party to lose. Donald Trump had to break through states that hadn't voted for the Republican Party in 24 to 28 years, depending on which Rust Belt state you were looking at. So Donald Trump did break a lot of barriers in order to win the elections. Republicans usually went through other pathways, such as Colorado or Nevada, which have no longer become in play necessarily for the GOP as much as the Rust Belt has, which is a complete flip from 8 years ago. So looking at this electoral map, I think that Joe Biden has a very large numbers of pathways to victory in this election, but you really shouldn't underestimate President Trump. He is a new type of candidate. Even though he's been in office for 4 years, he's still relatively new to the overall political scheme, and people can't really pinpoint what resonates so well with American voters with Donald Trump, and I think that's something that's probably going to go down in the history books, to be completely honest. So that pretty much wraps up this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.